We are constantly told that we live in the most advanced era in human history. From the moment we are born, the story is repeated. Life is better now than it ever has been. We can summon knowledge with a few taps, speak to someone across the globe in seconds, and access conveniences our ancestors could never have imagined. But underneath this glittering surface, there's a growing sense that something fundamental has been lost. The comforts of modern life have increased, yet so too has the feeling of dissatisfaction. The supposed fruits of progress have left many wondering why their lives feel emptier, not fuller. As philosopher Byung-Chul Han warned, the more intensively the world is transformed into information, the more it loses its meaning. We are not suffering from a lack of tools, but from a poverty of depth. We've been trained to believe that progress is a straight line, that with each new innovation, life becomes more complete. Yet this idea remains largely unchallenged. It's assumed that newer always means better, that faster always means wiser. But if that were true, why is anxiety surging? Why does disconnection feel like the norm? Progress has paradoxically made life more fragmented, not because change is inherently bad, but because in pursuing speed and scale, we've rewritten the terms of being human. Life has shifted from something lived to something measured, calculated, and optimized. Instead of being taught how to be present, we are conditioned to constantly improve. Instead of rest, we are told to hustle. In the name of efficiency, we have streamlined away the soul. The danger lies not in advancement itself, but in the way it has reduced us to metrics: productivity, reach, performance. In this process, something essential has slipped through our fingers. Man has become a tool of his tools. Thoreau once warned, and those tools, now digital and ubiquitous, shape our minds more than we realize. The machinery of modern life has subtly redefined our purpose. Work is no longer a means of contributing meaningfully. It has become the center of our identity. From the earliest years, we're molded to become efficient components of an ever-churning system: education, career, achievement. They form a conveyor belt, leading not to fulfillment, but to exhaustion. The rhythm of life is dictated by tasks and deadlines, and the idea of rest becomes almost suspicious. What was once sacred time, presence, conversation is now constantly interrupted by the demand to stay productive. Even after hours, the mind remains tethered to obligation. As sociologist Hartmut Rosa noted, acceleration is not a choice, it's a structural condition. Technology was sold to us as the cure for disconnection, a promise that no one would ever be alone again. But instead of deeper intimacy, we are left with shallower interactions. The immediacy of connection has come at the cost of presence. Notifications replace attention. Images replace memory. Validation replaces meaning. We are constantly aware of others, yet seldom truly with them. In this crowded noise, loneliness spreads. Not because we are physically apart, but because we are emotionally unseen. We live in a society of contact without community. Han observed, and it shows. Information, once a gateway to insight, has become a commodity. We scroll through 1,000 ideas but absorb none. The volume of content has overwhelmed our capacity to reflect. We are inundated, not enlightened. What was meant to inform now distracts. The internet, once imagined as a library of human knowledge, has become a hall of mirrors reflecting our desires, anxieties, and biases back at us. Depth is drowned by noise. The result is a mind constantly stimulated but rarely still. This fragmentation isn't incidental. It's the logical outcome of a culture that values output over understanding. We are told that to matter is to be seen, to be heard, to achieve. But these goals, dictated by external systems, rarely align with our internal truth. The more we chase them, the more elusive satisfaction becomes. The modern script for success: status, wealth, optimization leaves many secretly unfulfilled, wondering if perhaps the ladder they're climbing leads nowhere. As Alan Watts put it, you can't arrive at the place you already are. We are not suffering from a personal failure to adapt. We are struggling beneath the weight of a system that was never built to nourish the soul. A system that has confused progress with wisdom, stimulation with meaning, visibility with value. The cracks in this foundation are becoming visible, not because we are weaker than previous generations, but because our needs are no longer being met by the structure we're trapped inside. In this relentless architecture, time is no longer lived. It is budgeted, monetized, and squeezed. Days blur into each other, shaped by calendars, pings, and performance metrics. Even rest is scheduled, optimized, often haunted by the guilt of inactivity. Leisure, once a sacred act of restoration, is dismissed as laziness. To be idle is to risk irrelevance. The cult of busyness has redefined virtue. As the writer Thomas Merton warned, the rush and pressure of modern life are a form, perhaps the most common form, of its innate violence. And in that violence, something delicate within us withers. Work has expanded beyond its physical hours. We now carry our professions in our pockets, on our minds, into our homes. The boundary between labor and life is porous, eroded by tools that claim to liberate us. But liberation has become surveillance. Every moment is now potentially productive. Every silence, a missed opportunity. In this paradigm, burnout isn't a malfunction. It's the expected outcome of a machine that never turns off. Anxiety and exhaustion aren't pathologies. They are symptoms of obedience. But productivity alone cannot sustain the human spirit. To reduce life to output is to drain it of meaning. And so, another mechanism is brought in: consumption. We are taught that what we buy can soothe what we feel. That the next upgrade, the next experience, the next item will bring contentment. But it never does. Each acquisition only sharpens the hunger for more. Satisfaction becomes a moving target, always one purchase away. In the words of Erich Fromm, "If I am what I have, and if what I have is lost, who then am I?" Advertising does not sell things, it sells identities. It presents not products, but lifestyles. Happiness becomes a commodity, measured in packages and tracked in delivery notifications. But the fulfillment promised is always deferred. The dopamine hit fades, the void returns, and so the cycle repeats. This is not a glitch in the system. It is the system. Perpetual discontent fuels the economy. We are not meant to feel full. We are meant to feel almost full, endlessly. Even our perception of time has shifted. The present moment is no longer inhabited. It is tolerated, endured until the next milestone. We don't live now, we wait. For vacations, for promotions, for weekends, for something that finally feels like living. But when it arrives, it often resembles what came before. Days pass without texture, without pause. Life becomes a series of postponed beginnings. As Viktor Frankl wrote, man's search for meaning is the primary motivation in his life. Yet meaning cannot be downloaded, bought, or achieved. It must be remembered, and often rediscovered. Eventually, a quiet realization begins to emerge, not as a loud revelation, but as a subtle discomfort that the life we've been living isn't one we consciously chose, that the goals we chase were assigned, not selected, that the emptiness we feel isn't an anomaly. It's evidence that something essential has been misplaced. This discontent isn't a flaw of the individual. It's a signal, a message from within, whispering that life was meant to be more than function, more than motion, more than performance. As Carl Jung observed, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. It is not rebellion to question this structure. It is responsibility. When you pause long enough to feel the stillness beneath the noise, you may discover that your exhaustion isn't laziness. It's the body's protest against a life without presence. That your anxiety isn't weakness. It's the psyche's cry for authenticity. We've mistaken adaptation for health, busyness for purpose, and distraction for relief. But beneath those habits lies the same hunger, to feel real again, to be seen without pretense, to belong without performance, to live without having to constantly prove that we're worth the space we take up. And yet, reconnecting with what's real isn't glamorous. It doesn't come with applause or validation. It comes quietly. In moments when you stop performing and start listening, when you begin asking different questions. Not, how do I keep up? But why am I running? Not, What do I lack? But what have I abandoned? Meaning was never lost. It was buried under roles, expectations, and routines. What we've been seeking in the external world has always lived inside us, patiently waiting for a silence deep enough to be heard. This shift is not easy. It requires the courage to face a world that rewards noise and to choose stillness anyway, to embrace being, even when doing feels safer. It asks us to reclaim the parts of ourselves we silenced to fit in. And most of all, it demands that we stop outsourcing our worth to systems that do not know our names. Real belonging begins when we recognize that we were never meant to become machines, that being human was never a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. So if any part of this message reached something within you, let that recognition be your guide, not because everything must change overnight, but because awareness is the first step toward freedom. And if this path calls to you, this quieter, deeper, more intentional way, know that you're not alone. Every small act of awareness is a rebellion against the emptiness. Every pause is a protest. Every breath taken in honesty is a step back toward yourself. In a world built to distract you, remembering who you are is the most radical act of all.